The question hanging over Tehran since the opening's current war with the US and Israel is simple. Who is in charge? Formally, the answer is clear. Mojtaba Khamenei has assumed the role of supreme leader following the killing of his father, Ali Khamenei, on the first day of the war on 28 February. In the Islamic Republic system, that position is meant to be decisive. The leader has the final word on almost anything important: war, peace, and the state's strategic direction.
And the EU's anti-fraud office has begun a formal investigation into Lord Peter Mandelson, who was sacked as UK ambassador to the US over his ties to late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Lord Mandelson served as European Trade Commissioner from 2004 to 2008. The European Commission asked the European Anti-Fraud Office, OLAF, 2 months ago to look into allegations of misconduct during that 4-year period. And when Hezbollah fired rockets at Israel on March Tavu, 2 days after Israel and the United States launched a war on Iran, the resulting Israeli operation to destroy the group quickly became a mission to flatten swathes of southern Lebanon. And as Israeli warplanes carried out airstrikes across the country, soldiers seized more territory in the south. Ground operations began to take on the appearance of those seen in Gaza, and bulldozers tearing down buildings and demolitions, razing whole villages to the ground.
That Ukraine has succeeded in depriving Russia of much of the windfall profits it would have made from oil exports during March and April, as the war in the Gulf sent prices soaring to above $100 a barrel. A series of sources suggest that Ukraine intensified a long-range strike campaign against Russian port and energy infrastructure on March 21 in a calculated bid to prevent Russia from offloading oil onto tankers and to counteract the suspension of US sanctions on Russian oil, that which had been in place since 2022. That overpriced Mac Minis are flooding eBay amid shortages of the sold-out machines, which have become a favored tool for running on-device AI models like OpenClaw. This week, that reports indicated that the $599 M4 Mac Mini-based model with 16GB RAM and 256GB of storage is sold out on Apple's retail website, with no options for delivery or in-store pickup. That the shortages have since extended to other configurations of the base model, regardless of the amount of memory selected. This is the first time the base model has been sold out, some outlets noted. Meanwhile, that models with higher storage, 512GB and up, are only available to ship starting in June.
And customs authorities have revised the import values of glass tubing and glass ampoules used in the pharmaceutical sector, issuing a new valuation ruling to reflect updated pricing conditions. The Directorate General of Customs Valuation in Karachi announced the changes through valuation ruling the 2067 of 2026, covering imports from China and Europe.
That China's first pre-6G test network officially began operation on Tuesday in Nanjing, located in East China's Jiangsu province. The new network combines 6G technologies with an existing 5G framework and is designed to test next-generation communication capabilities.
And Iran's Foreign Minister Saeed Abbas Araghchi has confirmed today that he's embarking on a diplomatic tour of Islamabad, Muscat and Moscow. In a post on X, formerly Twitter, Araghchi said the purpose of his visits is to coordinate closely with partner countries on bilateral relations and hold consultations on key regional developments. And the US Justice Department is dropping its investigation into the Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell over alleged building cost overruns. US Attorney Jeanine Pirro said instead there would be an internal investigation led by the central bank's Inspector General.
That, for months, rumours and secrecy have surrounded last year's alleged Independence Day coup plot in Nigeria. But with this week's indictment of 6 people accused of involvement comes the first details of what is said to have been an elaborate plan to oust President Bola Tinubu. It was due to take place on the October 2025, the day Nigeria marked the 65th anniversary of its independence from the UK.
And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he has undergone successful treatment for early-stage prostate cancer after a small tumour was discovered during a routine checkup. The information was published on Friday in Netanyahu's annual medical report, with the Israeli leader posting on social media to explain that doctors discovered and treated the tumor during a medical checkup. The information was not announced at the time. And on April 20, the United States fired at and then seized an Iranian-flagged container ship close to the Strait of Hormuz in the northern Arabian Sea, amid its blockade of Iranian ports. It was similar to a scene which played out in the 1980s during the so-called tanker war between Iran and Iraq, during which both countries fired on each other's tankers in the Strait of Hormuz, seeking to cripple each other's economies.
That Cornwall exclusion zone, Ukraine. It's a freezing January morning and the sun is glistening across a placid, snowy, forested landscape. But the calm is deceptive. An air raid siren suddenly blares across the crisp winter air.
And the United States has 3 aircraft carriers in the Middle East for the first time in 23 years, with the arrival of the USS George H.W. Bush. The US military has said, amid a fragile ceasefire with Iran. The Middle East-based Central Command of the US military said on Friday that the carriers include 12 accompanying ships, more than 200 aircraft and 15,000 soldiers. And the United States Department of Justice has ended its probe into US Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, clearing a major roadblock to the confirmation of his successor, Kevin Walsh. U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, Janine Pirro, said on X on Friday that her office was ending its probe into the Fed's extensive building renovations because the Fed's Inspector General would scrutinize them instead. And MG Motor Pakistan has launched the second-generation MGHS and announced its price and booking details at an event held today. The new model is based on the latest global generation introduced in 2024 and will be available in Pakistan with 2 hybrid powertrains. These include a conventional hybrid marketed as Hybrid Plus and a plug-in hybrid variant branded as Super Hybrid. Pakistan has secured 3 very expensive emergency liquefied natural gas (LNG) cargoes from the spot market to avoid electricity shortages ahead of peak summer demand. And the Pakistan LNG Limited (PLL) received 4 bids on Friday after floating bids to cover a shortfall of 4,500 megawatts. The purchases are almost 140% more expensive than Pakistan's long-term LNG supplies from Qatar, and which typically average around 7.9 per MBTU and also exceed recent RLNG prices notified by the Oil and Gas Regulatory Authority. And Karachi. An 11-year-old boy was feared to have drowned after he could not be recovered hours after being swept away while swimming in an open water line in Karachi's Scheme 33 area on Friday. East Deputy Commissioner DC Nazrullah Basim, supervising the rescue operation, who was supervising Zahid Mohammed Khan, told Dawn that the boy, Zahid, 2 p.m. while swimming in the Karachi Water and Sewerage Corporation KWSC's line. And Benfica's Gianluca Prestiani has been handed a 6-match suspension for discriminatory conduct that was deemed homophobic in a Champions League match against Real Madrid. UEFA announced Prestiani will be banned for 2 more matches after UEFA said on Friday that a further 3-match suspension would be subject to a probationary period of 2 years, starting from the date of the present decision. He has already served a 1-match provisional suspension.
That a UK government unit responsible for documenting Israel's possible war crimes during its genocidal war in Gaza has been shut down amid funding cuts, The Guardian has reported. The London-based newspaper on Wednesday reported that cuts within the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, FCDO, have forced the International Humanitarian Law Cell to close. That. Yet another government spyware maker has been caught after its customers used fake Android apps to install its surveillance software on targets, according to a new report. On Thursday, Osservatorio Nessuno, an Italian digital rights organization that researches spyware, published a report on a new malware it calls Morpheus. The spyware, which masquerades as a phone updating app, is capable of stealing a broad range of data from an intended target's device.
And nuclear startup X Energies raised $1 billion in its initial public offering yesterday, selling 44.3 million shares for $23 each, a hefty premium above the $16 to $19 per share it was seeking. Initially, the company had hoped to raise around $800 million. The stock is expected to begin trading on Friday on the Nasdaq exchange under the ticker XE.
Bolt Graphics has announced the completed tape-out of a test chip for its Zeus GPU, marking the company's first move from FPGA emulation to manufactured silicon. The California-based startup said the architecture could deliver 17 times lower compute costs.
And Pakistan's textile industry has urged the State Bank of Pakistan, SBP, to enhance export refinance facilities, citing rising costs in a letter addressed to the SBP governor. The Al Pakistan Textile Mills Association, the APTMA, said the sector is facing increasing working capital constraints due to higher energy costs, supply chain disruptions, and global uncertainties.
Islamabad, the National Database and Registration Authority, NADRA, has revamped its website, enabling citizens to access district-level birth and death records and also file right-to-information (RTI) requests online through a verified login. According to the authority, it has launched a major overhaul of its website and replaced a text-heavy site that had been criticized as outdated and hard to navigate.
And Islamabad. After a gap of 28 months, state-run Pakistan LNG Limited on Friday secured 3 bids at 17,997 to 18.88 per million British thermal units (MBTU) for delivery between April 27 and May 8. A total of 4 bids were received and 3 were declared the lowest. And the Worldwide Fund for Nature Pakistan, WWFP, on Friday highlighted potentially irreversible risks and ecological degradation from development work at the foothills of Islamabad's Margalla Hills, and calling for the suspension of all such proposed and ongoing activities pending a transparent environmental review. The conservation organisation's call came 3 days after the Ministry of Interior announced that a new park and spanning 1,000 canals would be developed at the foothills of the Margalla Hills. And Ghana has summoned South Africa's top envoy to the country over reported acts of intimidation and harassment against its citizens and other African migrants in the southern African nation. Earlier this week, video clips were shared online showing vigilante groups attacking and confronting people they believed were in South Africa illegally. In one of them, they challenge a Ghanaian man over his status. And dual insults, one from the US president and another from a Russian commentator, flung at Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, appear to be uniting at least some of her critics behind her. Last week, US President Donald Trump, who has historically had a close relationship with Italy's conservative leader, decried Meloni as unacceptable after she stood up to him over his criticism of Pope Leo XIV. And Amal Khalil was killed while reporting on an Israeli airstrike in southern Lebanon during a 10-day ceasefire. She is the 9th journalist killed in Lebanon this year. As Lebanon buries her and talks continue on extending the ceasefire, what does her death say about the prospects for accountability? In this episode,